Well, hello, welcome again to a reading through of Plato's The Apology of Sokrates, and I got up to chapter 23, which in the numbering system is 34b6, and this is what the scholars have dubbed the Epilogos, the sort of epilogue, the bit at the end of his speech. And this goes for several sections leading up to the verdict. So, Aiende, O Andres, come now then, O men. Hamen ego ekoim an apologestai skedon estin tauta kai ala isos toiauta. Now, as often in Greek, you have to start at the end of the sentence and work backwards, and so I think the subject here is down here. So these things, and perhaps other such things, neuter plural subject singular verb, are skedon, almost the things which I have to make my defence. In other words, basically I finished making my arguments. Now, all of the rest of the section is really dealing with this issue, which was very common in the Athenian law courts, where people would bring in their children, their wives, their servants, their friends, their children and wives in tears to try and get sympathy from the jury or the judge. And Socrates said, I'm not going to have any of that. And he said, I think it's a disgrace to do that sort of thing. And so that basically, I think, is the argument of the rest of this section. So taka daan tis humon aganaktesein anamnestes hiautu. So, and perhaps some of you, remembering hiautu, perhaps his own situation, his own court case, aganaktean might become irritated, from agonactio, might become annoyed. If he on the one if he on the one hand was the one, and then we get a participle here, the one defending an agona, a case, even less than this case here, so even of less import than this case here. We get that lovely deictic iota here, so he'll be gesticulating at this point. So it's sort of, even if he was defending a case that is even more insignificant, we might say perhaps in English, than this case, and he might ask and he might supplicate for hikatuo, the judges metapolon dacruon, with many tears, paidia te autu anabibapsamenos. This is this anabibasdo. This is a sort of a technical law court term to bring someone up before the court. Anabibasdo, literally to step up, or causing to step up. So in other words, bringing to court the children of himself, notice the breathing here, his own children, in order that he might be pitied most of all. In other words, in order that he might get even more pity. And he brings up his children, and then we get more on that, kai alus ton oikeon kai philon polus. So brings up his own children and others of his household, and many of his friends. Now, we've had a men up here, I think earlier. Now we get the de. I think that's the men up here, and now is the corresponding de. But I, poieso, I will do uden, I will then do none of these things. Kai tauta kindu nuon hos an doxaimi ton heskaton kindunon. Slightly tricky bit here, I think. running the risk, I'll do it literally, running the risk in respect of these things, running the risk of the most extreme danger, as I think. So by doing this, running the risk, as I think, of perhaps the most extreme penalty, i.e. the death penalty. So he's saying something like here, I'm not going to do this, despite the fact that I may meet with the most extreme penalty, the most extreme danger. Takan un tis tauta en noesas althidesterion teron, an pros emeskoie kai orgistes autois tutois theatai an met orges temp sefin. Again, we get this taka an plus the optative construction. And we've got here, this is optative from echo, skoiane, and so echo plus an adverb, and I think we've got a comparative adverb here, meaning to be. So perhaps then someone thinking about or contemplating these things perhaps might be althidesteron is perhaps something like literally more stubborn, perhaps obdurate might be a nice word here. So someone perhaps thinking upon these things might become more obdurate with regard to me, and having become angry, or gistes, because of these very things, theto an, he might place ten psephon, this is the pebble, that's the boat thing they used to vote with, he might place his boat meta orges with anger. Aide tis humon hutos eke, and then dash uk axio men ga egoge. Aide un, I'll continue on there in a minute. So, but indeed, if one of you, and then there's echo plus the adverb again, so if one of you is, so disposed, or one of you is in this situation, uk axio, I would not think that there is any, so none of you would do such a thing. Aide un, but if there was one that did, eake an moidoko pros tuton legain legon hoti. I think reasonably, this is I think it's an adverb here, I would reasonably think, literally I would seem to me reasonably, so I would reasonably think speaking to this man, to say that, Greeks loves this sound of legain, legon, the sound patterns here, I would reasonably say that emoi o aristiasen men putines kai oikeoi. O my good man, there are, in fact, or perhaps perchance, certain ones and oikoi. So also, I think they take the tines with the oikeoi. So there also are certain members of my household for me. So, oh my good man, I certainly have certain members of my household that other words I could have brought up here. We get this very interesting bit here. Kaiga tuto auto totu homeru. Ud ego, and we get a quotation here, apodrues ud apopetres. Now this is an interesting thing because it's a quotation from Iliad 22, 1-6, where the original meaning is fairly obscure and it is debated and disputed. It's part of a speech that I think Hector makes in regard to Achilles just before he's about to die, and it literally is from the rock nor from the from the oak tree nor from the rock. Now in this context it's taken to mean the following: for this very thing, the word of Homer, this very thing from Homer, ude pefuka, I was not sprung, so I was not born, and then he has this quotation from the oak tree and the rock, but I was born from human beings. So he's interpreting this expression to mean I didn't come, a bit like our expression, from under the cabbage patch. I was born from human beings. Hosti, so that also there are for me oikaioi, these are members of my household, and indeed huies, sons. This is a third declension now. Huios is third declension in Attic. If you're familiar with later biblical Greek, it has a metaplasmus. It moves declensions. It becomes huios second declension in later Greek. But in Attic Greek, it's third declension here. So this is huies. This is the neuter plural. And O men of Athens, and there's three of them. An interesting fact. Haste men, on the one hand, one still a merakion, one now I should say, a merakion, that is a youth, probably perhaps late teenage years, and two are paideia, and two are still children. Al homos udena auton, but nevertheless none of them. So he's still going on about this idea of bringing up people before the court. So, and the made participle here is here. So anabibasaminos, having brought up here none of them, will I ask, and it takes a genitive, will I ask of you to acquit me, literally to vote me out, so vote me off, so to acquit, apopsephizdomai. Tide un uden tuton poiesi. Why then will I do none of these things? Uk alpha did zominos, o andres athenaioi. Not because I am stubborn, it's that same word we had before, not because I'm stubborn, O men of Athens, nor atimazdon humas, nor showing you disrespect, really, showing you lack of honour. Al a men, now we've got a men here, so we keep an eye out for the de. So amen Thasalios ego echo pros thanaton a me, alos logos, pros de, and that must balance the men there, un doxan kai emoi kai humin kai hole te pole, umoi doke kalonenai emituton uden poien. It goes on a bit here. I might pause there with that bit. So it's not because I'm stubborn, O men of Athens, nor that I'm dishonouring you or showing you disrespect, but if on the one hand, now there's echo plus adverb again, and so thoralios means bold, so perhaps fearless. So if on the one hand I am, so it's almost whether I am bold with regard to death or not, and then allos logos, that is another discussion, that's another debate, and balancing the men is de, but then it's in regard to, now doxan here probably in the sense of reputation. It's got a means glory in later Greek, but it has the sense of reputation. But with regard to reputation, kai emoi kai humin, both mine and yours, both for me and for you, and for the whole city, it does not seem right, does not seem kalon, does not seem to be kalon moi to me, doesn't seem to be a good thing for me, poiein, to do. Now Greek loves double negatives. We would say to do any of these things. Greek says none of these things. So it does not seem to be a good thing to me to do any of these things. And then kai teli konde, and we get two more kais. So both being of the age I am, being as old as I am, and having tuto tunima for toonima, and having this name, whether then truly or whether then falsely, pseudos, whether it's true or whether it's false, these are neuter, agreeing with onoma. So whether this we might almost say reputation for onoma here, whether it's true or whether it's false. But, and then he explains what it is, but therefore, now esti goes with the dedogomenon, I think, but it has indeed been decided that Sokrates differs tone, polone, anthropone from many men, and then toe probably in some way. So it's a bit long and contorted here. He's saying, I've got this reputation. Whether it's true or false, I don't know, but it's been decided, it's been said that I differ from other men. Socrates differs from other men in some way. E un humon hoi docuntes. So he's continuing on with this idea of you don't bring your children into the law court to weep in front of them. But if those of you then, the ones thinking that you differ, in other words, you are better, whether in wisdom or in courage or in any other virtue, heitiniun, whatsoever, the dative agreeing with these, so in any other virtue whatsoever, if any of you will do such things, so we might say, are to behave in such a fashion, it would be aiskron, it would be disgraceful. Hoi uspe ego polakis hioraka, this is perfect from Horao, for oftentimes I have seen indeed such ones, I think that really goes with the tines, so certain such ones who, whenever quinontai, they might be judged, so this is a present passive subjunctive, whenever they might be judged, thinking that they are someone, thinking of themselves of importance, and performing Dalmasia, amazing things. Some people take this as acting strangely, I think, but I think it's just doing amazing things. So they think they're very important and they're doing something amazing. It's take the participle. So it's thinking that they would suffer, to be about to suffer. This is a future infinitive from patho. Thinking that they're about to suffer some terrible thing if they might be put to death. Hosper, it's almost as though, and I think the an here really is for an, thinking as though if you lot were not to kill them, in other words, thinking that if you were not to kill them, that they would be about to be immortal. In other words, thinking that if you don't put them to death, then they'll live forever, which of course is nonsense. In other words, they have this fear of death, and they think that if they could only get off this court case and be acquitted, then they'll live forever. Hoi emoi dokusin aiskunein te pole periaptein. These are the ones who seem to me, periaptein, something like to bring upon, to touch really, to bring shame upon the city. Hoste, with the result that tina kai ton xenon, even someone among the foreigners, Hyperlabain might suspect that, so even a foreigner might suspect that, and the consequence of that we don't get to down here, but so that those of the Athenians who are differing, so perhaps more excelling, so those of the Athenians who are excelling in regard to virtue, the ones whom they themselves, this must be the xenon, they themselves prokrinusi place before themselves in the magistracies and in other honours, that they, the ones who do these things, differ in no way from women, that they're really just as cowardly as women. It's quite a long, contorted section, that bit. You may need to read it through again to get the gist of it all. Tautaga o Andres Athenaioi, for these things, O men of Athens, neither is it necessary for you to do, Boyan, you the ones thinking also, to be something in any way whatever. So you the ones seeming to be reputable in any way whatsoever, in other words having even the slightest reputation, neither, now I think Arn, I put a little epsilon here for myself, I think it's meant to be Arn for Arn, so neither, if we did them, should you allow them. So even if someone does do this, you should not allow them to do it. Alatuto auto endagnusthai, but to make plain this very thing, that katapse psephi aisthe, this is the future, it's the Attic future from katapse visdomai, that you will condemn all the more, and this takes a genitive, you will condemn all the more. The two goes with several participles. There's one there and there and there. So you will condemn all the more the one bringing in such piteous dramas, such piteous dramatic performances, that is, bringing in the children in tears and so on, and the one making the city into a laughing stock, katagaleston. Now this is a two-termination adjective, so although that's feminine, that's why it's on. Rather than keeping themselves to themselves, keeping the peace, so keeping quiet. So just to do that last bit again very quickly here. So, for these things, O men of Athens, neither ought you, the ones who have even the slightest reputation, the ones who think to be someone to any degree at all, any way whatever, you ought not to do these things, nor, even if we did them, you must not allow it, but to make clear this very thing, that you will condemn much more, condemn all the more, the one bringing in such piteous dramas, bring into the law court, again this is a technical word, aisago, to bring into the law court such pitiful dramas, and the one making the city into a laughing stock, rather than maintaining their silence. And that is the end of chapter 23.